Hey, Cross Park, welcome to your weekly leadership update. I have a number of announcements for you before I talk a little bit about our preaching series. We are moving to our summer schedule, which means, bottom line, starting in June 4th, we will have the service only at 9:30. So March, April, May was our spring session. It meant 9:30 Sunday school, 10:30 worship. In the summer, for June, July, and August, we will keep that 9:30 slot. It will only be worship. No Sunday school in the summer, which is normal for Cross Park. This allows us to do two things. Primarily, we're beating the heat. We're going an hour earlier to get out of some of the hotter part of the day. And for young families with little ones, this allows them to get home and get a nap. And hey, guess what? You and I can get home and get a nap as well. So we're finishing our spring schedule through May. And then June 4th, the first Sunday in June, we will shift to the summer schedule. So we'll, of course, tell you this several times in the weeks to come. We don't want you to show up at the wrong time. Secondly, this Sunday, I'm really excited. We're having Charles McKnight with us. Charles is a longtime friend, a fellow pastor and church planter here in Charlotte, who recently took the job as the coordinator for African American ministries for our denomination, the PCA, the Presbyterian Church in America. And Charles is an excellent leader. He's a great pastor. I'm really excited about him taking this role. We as a church support Charles and his ministry with African American ministries in the PCA. So he is not only going to share with us about his work in African American ministries and African American church planting, but he is going to preach the sermon for us this Sunday. So it's really great. You'll hear from a great preacher. You get a break from me and Grant, and I think you'll really be blessed. So 10:30 this Sunday. In addition to communion in the schedule, we will be led in the Word by Reverend Charles McKnight. Really excited to hear from him. We have a staff change for you to note. Of course, you don't all interact with all the staff all the time, but there are times when you need to interact with our bookkeeper. And Vicki Lewis has been our bookkeeper this last year or so. She's done a tremendous job. And many of you know the Lewis family is moving to India. So Jim has already gone ahead here for several months and has been sort of setting up shop, both business-wise and home-wise. And then Vicki and B are planning to move in July to join him. So they're moving to India. So obviously Vicki is not going to be able to be our Cross Park bookkeeper from India. We are sad to see her go. She's done an excellent job. But we have hired her replacement, and that is Polly Thatch. Many of you also know Polly, longtime member of our church. And she is already up to speed. So if you have any donation or financial questions that relate to the processing of your donations or any other detailed financial questions, you can always ask one of the deacons, but also now our new bookkeeper is Polly Thatch. I want to think with us today on this video for a minute about how this series we're in, the playlist for the journey home, how these Psalms relate to other parts of the Bible and how they relate to our lived experience. I told you Pastor Charles McKnight is preaching this Sunday, so I'm not wanting to steal any of his thunder. He's preaching from Mark 4, where Jesus calms the Sea of Galilee. He calms the water. So I'm not going to refer to his passage much and let him do that. But it is interesting to note some overlap between some of these different sections of the Bible. There's overlapping imagery in how the Bible talks about our spiritual experience. In the Old Testament, one of the important metaphors or images is this idea of the raging waters. So it can be in a flood of some kind, it can be a raging river, it can be a large body of water, you can be out on the ocean on a trip, and the concern is that nobody can control or tame the raging waters. This is one of those realities that there's a physical component to it, an obvious event that can cause difficulty for people, and that physical reality is signifying something deeper. So culturally, in the ancient Near Eastern worldview, people were very aware of the raging waters. And it was not simply that they were afraid of water or they were afraid of drowning, but the waters were a metaphor for the chaos of life. You cannot control the chaos around you. We should know that we have very little control over life. In the ancient Near East, they were very aware that they could not control many aspects of life, and so they talked about it often in these terms, in terms of raging waters that were seemingly at the whim of the chaotic forces around us. And So a lot of ancient religious practice was around trying to find a deity, a god or a goddess, who could maybe tame or slow down the chaos. And that if you could keep on the good side of that deity, maybe they would limit the chaos that could affect you. So in this setting, you can see why it would be so important when the Bible comes along, when Israel comes along and says, our God is unlike any other god or goddess. That our God is actually the maker of heaven and earth. He is not simply trying to throw his arms around the raging water. He's not trying to dam up or stop the raging waters, and he may or may not be successful. Rather, our God made all things. He's the creator. He made it all. He's in charge. He's actually over and above the waters. He's not constantly fighting with them. And so, of course, it's true that in many ways, the Bible and our lived experience show the constant conflict between good and evil. That's true, but there is a limit there, because there's not any question about who's going to win, whether there's going to be a happy ending, for example. God wins. God has all power and all control, and he can stop the raging waters. And this is really what we saw, although in different terms, this last Sunday in Psalm 121. My journey is not random. So whether we think of it in terms of a physical journey up to Jerusalem, whether we think about it in a boat out at sea, we are concerned, will we be able to successfully complete our journey? Will we be able to counter or avoid the forces of chaos that seem to conspire against us? And will we be able to fulfill the journey? Will we make it to the end? And part of what we saw in Psalm 121 is that God is sovereign. God watches over his people. He cares for us intently. He actually is concerned about the details of our lives. And he intends to get us to the end. And of course, what God himself intends, God will successfully bring to completion. He loves us well, and he will journey with us as we head towards the end. Now, this Sunday, I told you Charles is going to be in Mark 4, but in the service, to make some of these connections for us, we're going to be looking at Psalm 107, 23 through 32. That's going to be our confession this Sunday, 107, 23 through 32. I encourage you to go read that. We're also going to sing Psalm 107. Some of you know it as the Drunken Sailor song. It's always funny when we sing that in worship. But if you read the passage, you'll see, of course, why that lyric is in there. These sailors are doing business. They're out on the sea, and they cannot control the chaos. The waves and the winds are whipping, and they're going up and down, and they're terrified. They're at their wits' end. They know that they can't fix their problem. And so what do? They cry out to the Lord in their distress. This is a key move in the scripture. We see it over and over. We saw it in Psalm 120. When we are in distress, we ought to take it to the Lord. He is our help. He is the one who wants to answer. He cares about the details of our lives. Now, this passage in Psalm 107 is quite the parallel to Mark 4. Again, just go read it. You'll see exactly what I mean. So as we think about ourselves, whatever metaphor connects with our hearts, whether it's out on the sea, in a storm, walking to Jerusalem with dangers all around, we struggle to know, what do we do with distress? As distress comes upon us, can we trust God? Can we believe that actually he cares, that he intends ultimate good to me? How can I know that? And of course, the answer is always to look at the person and work of Jesus, to look at what he has done. Jesus has come. Jesus has completed his work. Jesus now walks with us. And so Jesus watches over our journey. However you want to conceive of your journey, whatever image or metaphor helps you talk and think about your spiritual trip, Jesus takes care of us. Jesus looks after us. And so as we picture what he is doing, the question is, can we picture him taking care of us and making sure that we will safely get where we need to go? That's where we struggle. Chaos hits us. Chaos hurts us. So many things in our world are chaotic. It's not that the chaos isn't real. It's simply that it is not reflective of true randomness in the universe. It doesn't say, we don't conclude as Christians, well, I guess God is out to lunch, or he's asleep, or he's not paying attention, or maybe he doesn't care that much about the details. We do have a good Father. He does love us. And he does turn salvation into suffering into salvation. He turns death into resurrection. And so knowing we have a Father who can and who does that kind of work, can we now trust that he can do that in my story too? So that's what we're talking about throughout this series. Charles is going to hit some of those angles again. I haven't heard his sermon, and I look forward to hearing it. But I want to encourage you in your heart to wrestle with this question. What does it look like for me to constantly come back to a place of trusting God in the midst of the hard things? Because he loves to show up as we trust him. Well, look forward to seeing you 9:30 for Sunday school, just 2 more weeks of Sunday school for the spring, and then 10:30 for our worship service. We'll see you Sunday morning, Cross Park. Thanks.